Hi friends! Welcome to the Overcomers, a movement and a group of people who have overcome and they've got a story. That's what the Overcomers is all about. You sharing your story. Why? Because there is power in your story and people need you. They need your voice. They need your story of hope, faith, and inspiration that where they're at right now is not the end. They need to know if you can overcome, so can they. Today, I'm excited to share with you another story of one such overcomer. So let's go check out who it is.
Here we go. I'm honored to be here today with my friend, Niki Schultz. Niki, thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm so honored that I'm able to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Yes. So I just want to quick do an intro so that anybody who is listening who doesn't know you, like I have had the pleasure of getting to know you before we begin. Niki is a wife and a mom joining us all the way from Cadillac, Michigan. She has overcome a lot in life, including at just 23 years old, being a divorced mother of 3 babies due to numerous counts of infidelity. She was angry all the time, resentful and embarrassed and ashamed. Now she's experienced the true meaning of grace, even to her ex-husband, living life expectantly and uncharacteristically with her ex. She's a woman of faith who is bold, courageous, and unbelievably honorable. But what I'm blown away most by you, Niki, and getting to know you is the heart journey you have been through. You can just vividly tell that your heart is so full of peace now. It radiates from you. Transformation, true healing has definitely happened. And only God could have done something like that with the horrificness of what you have been through. Quite frankly, the fact that you still have such a strong faith in God is incredible. You are a woman of faith, of great faith, and I admire your journey and how you've let him heal the horrific. So I am so excited to have you on with us today and for others to be able to hear this journey that you have gone through. So tell us, how did you go from where you once were to where you are now? Take us on that journey.
Okay, sure. So I will say to start off, I think the uncharacteristic piece is definitely the thing that I don't want to say most proud of, but something that I love to share because where I was, so I've been divorced now for, my daughter is 14, so 13 years. My daughter was 1 when we got divorced. And like you said, like I was super angry, I was super bitter, and I was not walking with the Lord at that time. So to know that I did all of that without Jesus is mind blowing to me. Like, I don't know how anybody uh, goes through life or how anyone makes it through life without Jesus. Because I'm so thankful that I have him now walking alongside of me. And he's the only reason that I'm not bitter and that I'm not angry. And honestly, the fact that, just to share a second, I actually called my ex-husband and I didn't want his blessing and I didn't want his support in sharing my story, but I just like to let him know when I'm sharing that because it's our story, not just mine. And so just the fact that we have that relationship now, again, we did not have that before, is one of my favorite pieces to share, is that we have that communication now and I have his support in sharing my story, because some of it's most of it's yucky, you know, it's messy, it's ugly, and we are both human. We both own this parts of our story that don't maybe show us in the best light, and I am super thankful for where I'm at now. So to go back to the beginning, I was 18 when I got married for the first time. So I had met him in high school. He was 2 years ahead of me. And so we dated for a couple of years in high school and we got married. So I was 18, the perfect age to get married, obviously. He was 19, so we were both young, and we moved 3 hours away to go to college together. And I would say, probably from the beginning, and I was naive. I did not want to see things happening under my nose. But from the beginning, he was pretty unfaithful. And it wasn't until I became pregnant at age 20, 19 or 20. I was 2 years into my school when I got pregnant, that I found out about the first affair. So I was pregnant, knowing that, I was married and young and he'd had an affair. And so I just stuck it out. Like, we just did life because that's, how I had to survive. So briefly, shortly after my oldest was born, I got pregnant again. That's just what I did, apparently. And so we moved up north to be closer to his family for the support. And so my boys are 13 months apart. And he had another affair right after my middle was born. And so this kind of went on for a couple of years, either right after I had a baby or when I was getting pregnant. It just kept happening. It was a cycle that we were stuck in. And so when my daughter then was born 21 months after my middle, we were both at a point that we knew, like, this was clearly not healthy. This was clearly not good for either of us or our babies. And we filed for divorce. So my daughter was a year old when I filed for divorce. And as much as I wanted to know in my heart that, like, that's what needed to happen, man, like, I was angry and hurt and all of those emotions. Having a 1, 2, and 3-year-old at the time that I filed was insane. And so we didn't know what we were both so young and we had 3 babies that, like, we had no idea what we were doing or how to do it. Like, we had no assets. Our divorce was fine. But then, like, filing for custody and all of that was tricky. But I will say, he was always been a good dad. There was nothing that would want me to deprive my children of their dad. And so we went straight for 50-50 custody from the get-go, which I know dads' hearts are, for their kids, but as a mama, like, my baby girl was a year old. And so that was really hard, really hard. So at the time I was going through the divorce, I actually met my now husband, and my ex was with his now wife. And for the first, like I said, before I met Jesus, I knew Jesus, I knew he existed. I went to VBSs and all of that kind of stuff growing up. But I did not have a relationship with the Lord. And for the first, 6 years, going through divorce and co-parenting and all of that, there was a lot of, yucky that was going. I wouldn't necessarily say name calling, but just knowing, like, the anger and hurt and not being able to let go. Just always knowing in the back of my mind, like, what he did to me. And I couldn't wait until my kids were older to ask, like, that question, like, why are you and dad not together? And I couldn't wait to throw him under the bus and let them know. And funny enough, I've never done that because Jesus. When I started attending church and started to walk with the Lord, like everything changed. And I know like that sounds so like cliche, like Jesus changes everything, but it's so true. The first time that I felt an overwhelming piece of forgiveness, that I knew things were going to be okay. My oldest was started having seizures. So he was diagnosed with epilepsy. And I remember being in the ER, and my ex-husband's, I don't think they were married yet, but she came in to the ER and she was holding me and she was telling me everything was going to be okay. And up until that point, I remember thinking and praying for the worst for them. There was not a piece of me in my heart that wanted them to succeed, that wanted them to have goodness. I remember praying that they would get hurt, or they would because I wanted my babies, and I didn't understand why they got to have the life that I was supposed to live. And so when my oldest started having seizures and we went through that experience, it was like my heart, like, I don't want to say melted, but it was like this piece where like she wanted goodness for our babies. And so like we were on the same page, we were on the same team. And for the first time, I knew that I had to let it go. So I will say, so that was I think 6 years ago. And in that time, in the last 6 years, and I will say my now husband is amazingly gracious. I have the support. I couldn't do what I get to do with my ex without his support, without him knowing that it's good for the kids, and he's protective of my heart too, in the most amazing ways. And so to have his support in our co-parenting situation is tremendous.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. That's incredible that you're at not only where you're at now, but I'm sure a lot of people who are going to be listening to this interview can relate to that feeling of not knowing how to forgive or even navigate through all of that when you've been so wronged. You feel so betrayed. How do you navigate those thoughts?
So that betrayal is so like, especially because not because I was so young. I mean, betrayal hurts regardless, but I didn't have a huge, I didn't have healthy relationships when I was growing up. Like I didn't get to see those. And so not knowing how to navigate that without Jesus, for one, like without Jesus, without healthy examples, it was all inside me. And I had women, I had lovely ladies that I worked with that were supportive, and I'm thankful for them, but they also like, they wanted them to hurt too, like, so it was easy to get caught up in the anger and just to want to stay in it because I felt justified, and so incredibly justified in being hurt and angry because I was hurt. So it took a lot of prayer. Once I realized that that's what I wanted and that's what I needed, because I was angry. I did not want to be angry anymore. I did not want to think of ways to try to manipulate situations so I would look good, but they would look bad, because there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that in my heart. And even if like my kids, they were young, they were too young to probably remember that, but like admitting it right now, like I didn't want them at parent teacher conferences. I didn't want them I especially did not want her. I did not want his new wife a part of it, because it wasn't fair. Like, why did she get to be with my kids? And I just had to accept it. Like, it didn't make sense why I just had to accept it.
Wow. Wow. So amazing. So it was when you got to that place where you're dealing with all of this internally and it's justifiable, but you're seeing now how she was interacting with your kids, and that started transforming you from the inside of, oh my gosh, she really does love my children. She really does love these kids and wants the best for them. So it slowly started to flip what was going on inside of you.
Yep.
Wow.
And like, I know that I would have said it. Like, I'm a really good actress. Put on a really good show. So in front of people, I would say like, oh, she loves them, or I would just say things, but I wasn't believing it. Like, inside, I was still really hung up on all of the junk, all of the yuck that I was just holding on to it. And so it wasn't until that moment in the ER that, like, it was just such an overwhelming, like, you have to let this go. Like, the Lord was just like totally speaking to me, like, you have to let this go, not just for the kids. Cause I would say like, oh, I just want the kids to be happy. I want to do everything that we can for them. But it wasn't just about them. It was about me. Like, I could not live like that anymore. I could not live so incredibly hurt or angry.
Wow. So walk me through then what happened when you realize this is happening inside and you're seeing this in front of you. Did you then go to her and say something? Did you go to him? Like, what are those next steps look like for you? Because again, I'm sure someone might be listening saying, this is smacking me on the side of the head. I'm in that same place and I need to let it all go too. So I wanted to make sure to share what your next steps were.
Sure. So I spent a lot of time in personal prayer, first and foremost, like, because I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't want to do it. Like, I didn't want to forgive them, because it didn't make sense. In all of the relationships that I had seen before, like, divorced people are angry and mad at each other for a really long time, and that's you don't just get over that. Like, you hold on to that, So it didn't make sense to me that I was supposed to let it go. And so I spent a lot of time in personal prayer, like, trying to understand what that would look like, what forgiveness would look like for us moving forward. And then slowly after that, after spending a lot of time in prayer, it was more like, I don't remember going to them specifically and asking either, like, and having that dialogue, but it was just the little things. So it was communicating to them in a kinder way, or in a more intentional way, including them in the decisions that I might not have before. And so they slowly, I know, started seeing that change in me. And then as my kids got older, they could see it too. Like, they could see that we were interacting in a way that was not the way before.
So beautiful, friend. And what an amazing gift you have now given your kids. You have shown them and modeled them what forgiveness looks like when they might go through things in their life where they don't want to forgive somebody either, where they feel wrong, where they feel betrayed. And if their mom can forgive someone who did that to their own mom, you've now painted the picture for them of, hey, I can do it too.
And so we're at this, we're at this beautiful place now that I love to share where we're at, because it is beautiful. And that's the people that we see on a daily basis think that that's always been like that. Like, that's just how we do. But to share the piece of where we were at, I think is such an important piece, because it wasn't always like that. So for people who are either just now going through divorce or have been sitting in it for a little bit, like, it's not easy. It doesn't come overnight. And I would never expect that it to come overnight, because you do have to work through a lot of pieces in a lot of cases, that it's not easy. Like, you can't just say be happy, or you can't just say forgive them. I mean, it's a complete process. So when people see us now, I mean, we sit together at all of our, kids' sporting events, all of our things. We do holidays together, we do birthdays together. That's just what we do now. But again, it's like, I want to like make it like, it's not Niki. Like, there's still, if I wanted to go back, like, it's not Niki. Niki is angry. Niki is bitter. Niki is a grudge holder. And so sometimes I am tempted to want to go back to that place. If, my oldest, we had an issue that I want to blame my ex for those things. And it's easy to want to go back to those places. And so that's Niki, but Jesus is the one who fully, like, every time I want to go back, like, I have to, I have to step back in there and be like, no, like, he didn't bring us this far to leave us now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
so good.
we can make it through. Like, we've made it through a lot. I mean, I have teenagers, dude. Teenagers are hard. And so to parent teenagers just with my husband is hard enough, but then to have that whole other piece of it. So a 4-parent unit who has very different opinions on different things and different standards and rules, like 2 different houses with rules, like, Jesus has got to guide me, because I can't do it. I can't do it on my own.
So good, friend. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to share so vulnerably the entire journey of, like, no, it is not a quick fix.
No.
And it is a continued journey that I'm on, and a continued mindset of choices I'm making. And just to be willing to share both sides of that, of this is where we were, and how amazing is it that we're here now, but we didn't get here now easily. So I think in sharing both sides of that, you're sharing the fact that, hey, I get it. If you're not quite there yet, and it's going to be a journey, but just know it's possible. You've painted that possible picture for people today.
Yeah.
So I have a couple final questions as we start to wrap out our call today. And one is, a lot of times people wonder how they can help when they hear stories like yours. When someone's going through a journey like yours, what is the most helpful thing someone can do that is going through something like that? What can we do for somebody?
So I want to say to not put expectations on it. And I think that that's where I was at for a long time in my own journey, was that I saw divorced people and people walking this out in one way, which was like the anger, and you didn't get along, and you just communicate through the kids and everything. And I didn't get to see like the other side of it. And so, like, to know that there's no one right way to do this is super important. So when I say that, like, it is unconventional for us, and not so much anymore. I will say, like, I love seeing more and more people being able to work together as a co-parenting situation. It's getting more common, but 10 years ago, it wasn't. And so I had people in my ear at times saying, well, why are you doing that? Like, you shouldn't do it like that. But there's no one right way to make it work. So what if it's working for your family? Like, go with it. If you can celebrate Christmas together, great. If you can't, if it doesn't work for your family, that's okay too. Like, you may get to that point, you may not, and that's okay. But having those boundaries, I think, are super important as well. Like, you knowing that you may not be there right now, you may want to be there, but right now this is not healthy. Like, I think is super important. I think that's super important.
That's so good. So really, if I'm hearing you right, it's accepting that person that you love forever they're at in the journey and not expecting them to be at a different place at any point in time and just loving them where they're at.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. One last question is if you could tell somebody else one piece of advice that is maybe going through what you went through, but they're a little bit further back. They're not at that place of healing that you are now and reunion that you are now, but they're going through it. They're in the mud.
Yeah.
What one piece of advice would you tell them today?
I think it's really going back to what I had said with the last question, is that like you get to decide what your divorce looks like. You get to be in charge of your story. With that being said, I will say I am very blessed to have an ex who is willing and able to do all of those things. I recognize that not everyone has that benefit. So some people might be there and their ex isn't. And so that's really hard and it makes everything a little bit different. But knowing like you get to decide in your heart if you want to forgive them or maybe you're the one who did wrong. Like maybe you're the one who needs to ask for forgiveness, which is, is the flip side of it. Like you get to decide moving forward how you're going to proceed, either for yourself or for your kids or for your future spouse. There's a lot of things that I probably should have done differently in my marriage now that were just not beneficial at the beginning. So to say like, I get it, like it's hard and you don't want, you want to hold on to that, but you get to decide moving forward, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not, in a month, but you ultimately get to decide where you're going with it.
So good, friend. I just got to ask you one more question because that was so amazing. Tell me more about just this space that you're in now. What does it feel like to have let all that go and to be living the life that you're living now? How do you feel?
I am overwhelmed often by it, I will say, because none of it makes sense. My husband and I went over to my ex's house on Super Bowl Sunday, and we that's what we do. And there was a point that I'm sitting there like and our kids are around us. Like we get to be with our kids, we get to be experiencing it together. And sometimes I don't feel worthy to live the amazing life that we get to together. So I'm very overwhelmed by it often. That's
beautiful. You just described redemption and how he redeems the horrible stuff that we go through and he really cares. Wow. Yeah. Wow, friend. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. You are so freaking courageous. And I just have to say, I know that I'm not the only one who's going to be saying that and listening to your interview. Thank you for being so real, so vulnerable, and sharing the journey. As painful as it has been, you did not hold back. And I know it's those feelings of frustration and the thoughts that you battled are the very thing that listener needs to hear today, to know that they're not alone with whatever they're facing and going through too. So I really, really appreciate, and I know they appreciate your willingness to be here with us today and to share that journey and to paint the picture too of like, hey, where you're at right now is not the end for you either. You have definitely done that today. You are an amazing wife. You are an amazing mom, and I am so excited for what is yet to come for you, friend. Life is good now, but holy crap, hang on. So anyone who's also listening today, I want to make sure to mention that Niki will actually also be joining us for a panel discussion about divorce where you can ask questions to them directly. She's going to be joining two other couples on that panel discussion. So make sure to search for that discussion on our website and tune into that as well, so you can hear more from our amazing friend, Niki. Niki, thank you again so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Wow, wasn't that powerful? Do you have an overcomer story? Do you know someone who needs to hear this message? Please share this video on your social platforms and tag us so we know who you are. Stay tuned as we share more Overcomer stories in the weeks ahead. We're looking for you. We're looking for the Overcomers. Join us. Let's come together as the Overcomers. Start sharing your story. We have multiple ways you can start getting involved and repping the movement, repping your story of what he has done in your life. And last but not least, if you want to learn how to overcome, visit www.dannyjohnson.com. That's my coach, and that's where I learned how to overcome. Thank you so much for joining with us today. We believe in you, and we believe in the power of story. We believe in your story.